Joining us from the Perth studio is Adrian Griffin from Lithium Australia. Adrian, we understand you'll be presenting at this week's Technology and Low Emission Minerals Conference in Perth. Why is this so important to be a part of?
Well, first of all, good morning. The important thing about that is Lithium Australia has a policy of providing sustainable and ethical products to the battery industry, and in doing that, we've developed many technologies that are required to create the circular economy. Now, when I say the circular economy, we're looking at energy metals and the way they are introduced into the cycle, the way they're processed, the way they come out of the cycle and then get reprocessed to re-enter the production chain.
What are the key drivers growing this market for low emissions inputs?
Well, the key drivers are quite clearly legislation. If we look at countries around the world, you've got the European Union legislating out of business internal combustion engines. Now, most of that's going to happen by about 2030, but I think most importantly, there's a huge change in India and China. China in particular, where most of the public transport is being changed from internal combustion engines to electric power. Now, the electric power, of course, in this case is batteries, and to a large extent the batteries, the lithium-ion phosphate batteries, the safe lithium-ion batteries. So we're seeing a revolution here that's driven by legislation, and it's driven by the need to get rid of emissions. And that's the crux of it, emission reduction on a global scale.
You've been discussing the battery industry there. Can you tell us a bit more about how manufacturing is evolving to keep up with this green movement and how you're leveraged at Lithium Australia?
Well, I can indeed, and the first thing you need to realise is that every battery has a different emission profile when it's produced, and there are a number of competing chemistries. There are about half a dozen of them on the market, and if you compare something like NCM batteries, nickel, cobalt, manganese, with LFP, lithium iron phosphate batteries, the emission profile to produce a lithium iron phosphate battery is somewhere between 30% and 50% of that of the competitors. So one of the things we should be doing is looking at ways in which we can produce batteries that themselves have a lower emission profile. Now, if you then look at the efficiency of a battery and have a look at, imagine the battery as being three components. There's a cathode on one side, an anode on the other side, and an electrolyte in the middle. So you've got two electrodes, you've got an electrolyte. I think the technologies today with respect to the cathodes have just about reached fruition. They're very efficient. So the best way of getting more efficiency out of a battery is to improve the anode. You'll notice today we announced that Lithium Australia, in fact, is embarking on a program to produce advanced anode materials to go with our lithium iron phosphate cathodes.
Tell us more about this in detail.
Well, I think, again, if you look at the emission profile, it means if you've got a gigafactory that produces a certain amount of batteries, a certain amount of energy storage, and you can reduce the emissions required to generate the batteries by, let's say, 30%, it's a fairly big step. It's a huge improvement from an environmental point of view, but then simultaneously by replacing the anode with something more sophisticated, a more efficient anode, and I'm talking specifically here about anodes that contain silicon metal. If you can do that and get a battery with longevity, you've improved the performance of the battery as well. So if you look at the overall emission envelope, you can reduce that enormously, and that's incredibly important. Not only is it going to produce a battery that's better for the environment, but it's going to produce a battery that's got better performance for consumers.
Tell us more about how Lithium Australia is distinguished from its peers, given this latest announcement.
Well, the first thing you can say about Lithium Australia is it's the only company in the world that's developed the technologies to go full circle to create the circular economy for the energy metal industry. And we have, of course, taken waste materials from Kalgoorlie. We've converted those to lithium chemicals using proprietary processes. Those proprietary processes, incidentally, are designed around providing much better resource utilisation with mining operations, and as a consequence, ultimately produce lower emissions per unit of lithium that gets into the cycle. So we can make those lithium chemicals, we can move those to our cathode production plant in Brisbane, we can make cathodes and ultimately lithium-ion batteries out of that. We have made the first lithium-ion batteries out of waste materials from Kalgoorlie, and they will be tested in coming weeks. Beyond that, of course, we've concentrated on taking the batteries that are normally disposed of, and today in Australia about 97% of batteries end up in waste fill. We're working on developing the technologies for recovering the valuable metals out of those and putting them back into the production cycle. And it is those very things that set us apart from other companies in the business.
Adrian Griffin, thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Sorry, Adrian.